Could we possibly see division and provincial rivals, the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Ottawa Senators, pull off a fairly significant trade? There's a lot of rumors suggesting that there is one in the works, and it could be announced as soon as July 1st or after. We'll get into all the details coming up next. So welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. Now we kind of have some breaking news on a fairly significant trade rumor that we might actually see go down as early as July 1st or shortly thereafter, involving the Leafs and the Senators. Now, of course, as we know, the Maple Leafs have been trying to move defenseman Nikita Zaitsev for some time. The defenseman had requested a trade at the season's end, and they've been trying to move him here ever since. Now, of course, many people aren't fond of the contract that he brings. He has $4.5 million left for 5 more seasons, and of course he struggled in Toronto and kind of wants to get out of the limelight here a little bit. So there is talk right now that the Sens and Leafs have discussed making a trade involving him that could possibly send Cody Ceci over to the Maple Leafs. Some think it could be a one-for-one deal, while many others believe that there likely would be other parts involved. And personally, I think having other parts involved makes a little bit more sense here. A couple of key points on Zaitsev's contract is he's owed a $3 million signing bonus on July the 1st. So obviously, given the situation that Ottawa's in with owner Eugene Melnyk not wanting to be fond of paying out bonuses here, many believe that they want to wait. The Leafs can pay the bonus on the 1st, and then the trade could take place afterwards. However, if the trade could be done ahead of time, then the Senators could nullify his no trade clause, which I think would be very beneficial here as well. But I would imagine the Senators and Melnyk will want to go down the route of not having to pay the bonus. The way Zaitsev's contract is structured here, there would be no bonuses for the next 2 years, and then after that there would be a split of a signing bonus and salary in the final 2 years of the contract. So basically they could get away without paying him any signing bonus for the next 3 seasons. Which would be beneficial to how their internal budgeting works. So obviously, if you take a look at Cody Ceci now, he's a restricted free agent right now, has no contract for the coming season. He does have arbitration rights, and many believe that he's likely going to end up with a contract of around $5 million. That's likely what he would obtain on a 1-year deal through arbitration. And many believe the contract request from Ceci to Ottawa was a 5 or 6 year contract around the $5 million mark annually. And obviously they don't want to do that contract, otherwise we'd be done here. This trade wouldn't be being discussed. However, if you take a look at the Maple Leafs' overall salary cap situation here, this would potentially help them a little bit, but they'd have to add to the deal to make it beneficial at all here, in my opinion. So I really think that it would not be just a one-for-one trade. It would have to be Zaitsev plus some sort of sweetener to make sense for this for both sides. Now, right now, the Maple Leafs show on cap friendly here, and I'll put it up on the screen, is having $5.5 million in salary cap space, but they do have the option of taking the Nathan Horton contract, which is $5.3 million, and either moving it or putting it on an LTIR to free up some more space. That gives them $10.8 million. But of course, the big one that's not done yet is the Mitch Marner contract, and he's looking for north of $11 million. At least that's what's being discussed and speculated here. Either way, regardless of what Marner ends up getting paid, you know it's going to be a substantial amount, and it's going to eat away all or most of their current salary cap space. But of course, if you take the Zaitsev and Ceci contracts, really Ceci is going to end up making probably as much or more than Zaitsev here in the end. You get Zaitsev making 4.5, you get Ceci likely making around 5. So really, without having another piece added from the Toronto side to cut down their overall cost so they pull ahead a bit from a cap perspective, this really doesn't make a lot of sense. You also factor in the part here that Zaitsev's contract really could be looked upon as potentially being a little bit more toxic here than Ceci's. However, both of them have struggled. Neither one of them has really lived up to expectation. They've kind of both been their local team's whipping boy on a lot of occasions as well for defensive blunders and whatnot. So they could probably both benefit from a change of scenery here. And obviously the Senators also need to spend money to get to the cap floor. If they're not comfortable paying Ceci the $5.5 million that he's looking for, they might be more comfortable paying Zaitsev's 4.5, even though, like I said, it's not a great contract. He hasn't really performed well, but at the same time, there is a connection there with their new head coach, DJ Smith, who was Zaitsev's defense coach in Toronto. They're very familiar with each other, and Smith must be very confident that he can help him become a better defenseman and succeed more in Ottawa than he did in Toronto. Now, of course, the last time we saw a big deal between these two clubs was again with struggling assets going in either direction when the Senators acquired Dion Phaneuf And on a short-term basis, at least that deal didn't work out too bad. The Senators got about a year and a half of decent play out of enough before they shipped him off to the Los Angeles Kings here. And of course, now he's bought out and is a free agent. But overall, I must say that the Maple Leafs took back a lot of toxic contracts from the Senators as well, and either buried them or bought them out or whatnot. So it was kind of a win-win in a sense for both teams. So we'll see if this deal actually does go down, if it could possibly be a beneficial side for both sides here as well. So obviously both guys are struggling. Both teams could probably use a bit of a shake-up on their blue line. And really, from the Leafs' perspective, it's a necessity. I don't really think Cody Ceci is the answer to their defensive problems. He's really not the greatest defensively. From somebody like me who watches the Senators pretty much every game, Ceci's really struggled hardcore in his own end, makes a lot of blunders. His hockey IQ is really not the greatest. He come up as a junior with a ton of potential, a lot of promise. Got off to a pretty good start. In junior, he had a lot of offensive upside. That hasn't really translated either. So really, he needs to be slotted appropriately. He's played too high up in the lineup in Ottawa. You could say the same for Zaitsev in Toronto. Both of them need to probably be bottom pair defensemen. So for what they're being paid, though, or looking to be paid, in Ceci's case, that just doesn't really, make them a third pair guy. They'd have to play higher in the lineup to kind of earn their contract. So this very well could turn into a bit of a swap of bad contracts. But like I said, from the Leafs' perspective, the sweetener would more likely have to be a player off the roster, not draft picks like some people have been suggested, at least in my opinion, because they're going to have to pull ahead salary cap-wise for this to make sense. We've heard all along they wanted to dump the Zaitsev contract to free up space to get their other contracts looked after. Not to say that they couldn't make potentially here other moves as well. But, maybe they'd add like a Connor Brown or I'm not sure, maybe something else. I mean, Brown's a player that's been mentioned numerous times here, and I think Brown would probably fit in well with a lot of the young forwards that the Senators have right now. So we'll see what happens here. Obviously, we don't have full details at this point. This is just a kind of a hot rumor going around, but a lot of the NHL insiders are reporting this deal is pretty much done to kind of like have a verbal agreement in place and should execute this trade. Likely coming July 1st here, once that signing bonus is paid. There should be plenty of content coming between today and tomorrow. There should be plenty more activity when it comes to trades, buyouts, obviously lots of signings tomorrow. So stay tuned here. I'll keep you all up to date with all the breaking news here in all 31 teams. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.